session. I hope you enjoyed the first session on embracing empathy. We got a lot of good nuggets that we can implement in our lives, so it would help in our interactions with each other. We have another dynamic session. This one is on faith and identity in the workplace. And we have a great panel that's going to be presenting on that topic. And I'm sure you will find a lot of things that will inspire, that will inform how we go through living our faith for those of you who are people of faith. I wanted to just give a little bit about what Diversity Day is, why we celebrate it. World Day for Cultural and Diversity. World Day for Cultural Diversity for Dialogue and Development is a full title, but we reduced it because it's so much to say. But here we celebrate that every year, May 21st. Our theme this year is Our Shared Stories, Celebrating Together. That was the world theme. But on the city level, we basically use the theme Stronger Together, because we do believe our diversity makes us stronger together. And how we share and present to our constituents, those that we serve, it's important that we are aware and that we relate to them in a manner that each person can express their own cultural diversity, etc. Again, part of our session today, because we bring diverse topics, our session today is on living out our faith and our identity in the workplace. And I will pass it on to Lisa Gitlin, who will give you more. She's with the Temple Beth Am and Break the Bias Initiative.
Good morning. We're so pleased to be joining the City of Miami on Diversity Day. My name is Lisa Gitlin, co-chair along with Caroline Miller, our moderator of Break the Bias, part of Temple Beth Am's Unbiased Initiative. The Unbiased Initiative of Temple Beth Am educates the Miami community on anti-Semitism and all forms of hate through programming, learning opportunities, partnerships, and youth engagement. Break the Bias is one of the programs of the Unbiased Initiative that fosters opportunities for dialogue among individuals to openly share and learn about one another's distinct identities and lived experiences. By cultivating increased consciousness about race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, religion, ability, language, and other identities, community members can embrace, respect, and value one another and proactively address bias and injustice. It was originally initiated when Samantha Gitlin, a senior at Gulliver Prep, witnessed the increased vocalized anti-Semitic speech in the public and on social media, following the anti-Semitic hate speech by Kanye West last year. She felt terrified that one person's words could bring power to hate. Realizing that the hate that has been stirred up is not only directed at the Jewish people, but directed towards every minority, Samantha created Break the Bias, which was a town hall panel discussion first held at Pinecrest Gardens in March of 2023. We are thrilled to be partnering with the City of Miami and its Diversity Day to offer this iteration of Break the Bias, Faith and Identity in the Workplace. The panel consists of individuals from different faiths and identities who will share their workplace experiences. We will explore how anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, racism, homophobia, and forms of bias manifest in our work environments, and how we can create an inclusive community that dignifies all identities. Before we begin the official program, we're pleased to be joined by Chaplain Omi Yanaris, who will be offering some grounding remarks. Chaplain Omi is a multi-agency police chaplain serving several law enforcement departments, including the City of Miami Police Department. She also serves as a multi-agency peer chaplain for the Miami-Dade Multi-Agency Peer Team and serves as a victims advocate witness coordinator with the City of Miami Police Department. Welcome, Chaplain Omi.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us. And on behalf of City of Miami Police Department Chaplaincy, we're so excited to be able to be here and have this opportunity. So when I was invited here, I saw faith and identity in the workplace. And I just believe having someone within that workplace that you can just go to. It's a safe place where you can just be you and speak and not be judged is one of the most important things I believe that we can have in our coworkers. We're all going through many things. I think if we all sit in a round table having coffee and snacks, we have so much common ground. And to be able to have someone to talk to nowadays is so important. So I'm so excited that we are having this healthy conversations with all religions and all faiths where we can learn from one another, but most importantly, to have that safe space that we can land on, to have that one person, that circle of friends within our workplace to be able to talk to. I'm a mom of 4. Sometimes I need to talk to another mommy, and I'm not going to see color nor race. I'm going to see it's another mom that needs that mommy love at that moment, and to have a level head to go forward in life to be the best version that you have. So I encourage you all in your workplace to be those lighthouses in the community that we so need. So thank you so much for this time.
Thank you, Chaplain Omi, for your words.
Yes, ma'am.
We are grateful to be joined today by 3 esteemed members of the South Florida community. Iqbal Akhtar is a dual appointment in the Department of Politics and International Relations, as well as Religious Studies at Florida International University, and leads several courses, including the International Relations of South Asia, Development of International Relations, Thought, Gender, and Jihad in the Quran, and Islam and International Relations. Jarnisha Darling is deeply committed to advancing health equity and accessibility through her roles as Supervisor of Medical Staff Services at Baptist Homestead Hospital and Regional Project Coordinator of Florida at Florida Impact to End Hunger, in addition to serving as co-chair of Homestead Hospital Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. Tracy Labgold is Keshet, Florida Education and Training Manager, where she works for the full equality of all LGBTQ Jews and their families in Jewish life. Tracy began her career as a high school English teacher and then spent the last decade facilitating anti-bias and diversity awareness workshops for the Anti-Defamation League before joining Keshet. Welcome. So now we're going to go ahead and define the key terms that will be used today. Social identity. Social identity can refer to either an individual's private and personal view of the self, or how an individual is viewed from the perspective of their belonging to a particular social group. The power or privilege held by certain identities may vary depending on the context. And you can look in the Q&A and there will be definitions as well as links. Anti-Semitism. It is the prejudice against or hatred of Jews. Islamophobia is the fear or hostility directed at the religion of Islam and or Muslim people. Racism is the discrimination, hatred, or violence towards a person or a group of persons because of their origin or their belonging or not belonging to a specific ethnic group or race. Homophobia is the hatred or fear of LGBTQ plus IA plus people. And transphobia is the fear or hatred of people who break or blur gender roles and sex characteristics, which exists in both the heterosexual and LGBTQ communities. I'll now pass it over to our moderator, Caroline Miller.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Lisa. I'm so pleased to be joining you all today. I am also a co-chair of the Break the Bias Initiative of Temple Beth Am. I'm pleased to be moderating today's panel. My professional experience is really across nonprofit and government sectors, facilitating social justice conversations and working to embed equity considerations into organizations, policies, programs, and policies, processes, programs, and policies, I'm sorry. I wanted to just take a brief moment to review some of the group norms and agreements that our panelists have previously discussed and collectively agreed to honor and respect during our time together today. And we would ask that all participants joining today also honor and respect those. The first is that we are walking today into a brave space, And we recognize that this conversation will at times be uncomfortable, but we are asking all folks to show up bravely to it. The second is really to reiterate that our goal today is for dialogue, not debate, and that we hope that each person feels further understood and gains an understanding of the other. And just to distinguish briefly between dialogue and debate, dialogue is a form of communication that encourages people with different ideas to build meaningful relationships across difference through generous and empathic listening skills. And dialogue is really about adding more to the common pool of knowledge versus debate being a form of communication where an issue is discussed and opposing arguments are put forward. And it's really about listening to find flaws and weaknesses in the other people's ideas. So we're aiming for dialogue today. And then lastly, I want to uplift curiosity and goodwill, encouraging everyone here to bring their most open-minded and curious selves, along with a generosity of spirit to this space. We each know a lot and we don't know even more. And so if someone says something that doesn't sit well with you, we encourage you to lean into the conversation with genuine curiosity and resist the urge to be individual. A few housekeeping items before we hear from our panelists. As you know, today's session is recorded. As I pose questions to the panelists, you can follow along and read them in the Q&A tab, the Q&A function, which you should see on the top of your screen. There will be an opportunity for questions in the second portion of today's program, so please hold them until then, and then we would welcome all questions and comments in the Q&A section. And the last thing is I want to just share my gratitude for our panelists on the front end for sharing today, and mention that while each are coming from a distinct institution, they come today to this space speaking from their own personal lived experiences and representing themselves as individuals. So with that, I would love to kick it off and invite each of our panelists to share their name, their pronouns, and which identities they associate with, including social and personal. And I am going to start with Tracy.
Sorry, it took a minute for the mute button to turn off. Caroline, thank you so much. And I'm really honored to be here with both of my co-panelists. My name is Tracy Labgold. My pronouns are she, her. And when we talk about immutable characteristics, I identify as Jewish, as a lesbian, as a white woman. And then on the more personal level, also as an educator and a mom.
Thanks, Tracy. Let's go to Darnisha and then Iqbal.
Hello, my name is Darnisha Darling, and I would say that my pronouns are she, her, and I do identify as a lesbian Black woman. And also I am also a mother as well. Thank you, Tracy, for adding that in.
Hi, my name is Iqbal Akhtar, and I'm a teacher. I think is an important part of it. I'm a father, and I think someone who genuinely is trying to help and sort of connect each of us together. So I think that my identity is important, but the identity of being a connector. And being a bridge between people, between ideas, and even between the spiritual and the material world. So that's how I hope to be here with you all, and hopefully we can connect also in the future. Thank you.
Thank you all. And I'll just introduce myself again, Caroline Miller. I use she, her pronouns. I identify as a white Jewish woman and also a mother to 2 little kids. So I think we will follow the same sequence for this first question. So I'll kick it off to Tracy first. Tracy, would love to hear from you. Could you please share something with us about your faith identity that is meaningful to you, and something about your faith identity that people often misunderstand?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you. So I identify as Jewish, as I stated a minute ago. And one of the things that I find really meaningful about my Jewish identity is that the definition of Yisrael, of the as Jews, we often think of ourselves as children of Israel, right? And the definition of Yisrael is one who wrestles or struggles with God. And I love that aspect of my Jewish identity, that I'm encouraged to really grapple with and struggle with and wrestle with concepts of faith and meaning and understanding and relationships. And that's something that I really appreciate. And then I think something that is often misunderstood about my faith identity is something that is misunderstood about many types of identities, which is that not all Jewish people we're not a monolith, right? There's a wide range of perspectives, observance levels, identities, cultures, ethnicities wrapped up into the Jewish religion and the Jewish nationality. And I think that that's true also of the LGBTQ community, as well as all other communities, right? Each of one of us is an individual, and we belong to, or we are part of, or we're in relationship with other aspects of our identity. And these things are just facets of what makes us who we are.
Thanks, Tracy, for sharing. Darnisha, how about you?
Hey, one thing about my faith identity, which I am Christian. I always pray for peace that exceeds all understanding. And through religion, when we're going through trials and tribulations, we call on our religion because it's a means of coping. It provides us hope that we will get through whatever it is that we're experiencing in that particular moment. I find strength in my spiritual beliefs and in my Christianity when facing those adversities or those moments of uncertainty. That's very meaningful to me, being able to call on my religion, just to break down and pray whenever I need to, whenever I go through something. I would say a misunderstanding that I hear a lot when it comes to Christianity would be judgment, that we use the Bible as a means as a checklist to kind of mark off what criteria someone is not meeting. But I tried my best to, I welcome everybody. As Jesus did, he welcomed sinners, people of all walks of life. Jacob was a liar, Paul was a murderer, and there was no judgment cast upon them. And that's really what I would like to stamp out, is that misconception regarding judgment.
Thank you. How about you, Iqbal?
Yeah, I think so. The term Islam comes from the Arabic or the Semitic term sin lam mim, which is a tripartite root, and in a sense it means submission to God. And I think that is something that is extremely profound for us as people. So I think what it does, one of the things for me, I believe it does, is it forces us to be more humble in our theology. So we are very lucky to live in the modern world that we live in, and we feel in many ways that we are captains of our own destiny, and that what we think of is right is always right. And I think one of the advantages of living in a pluralistic society is that we have people from different faith perspectives or none, and we can learn from each of them, and also to not have the arrogance to think that what I do and what I think is God's will only, but to also be able to step back and say, okay, what really is happening here? And I think that God talks to us in so many different ways. He talks to us through people. He talks to us through signs. And so the more humble we are, the closer we are to the earth in terms of our reception to the divine message that's all around us. I think the more harmonious our society is. So that's something, that idea of humility in theology, I think is very important, so that we're constantly checking ourselves so we can be in a right relationship and submission with God.
Thank you. And would you say that, is there anything you want to add in terms of the misunderstanding piece, or you want to leave it there?
Yeah, I mean, I had to deal with a lot, especially after, unfortunately, September 11th, and now we're also, going through this massive, horrific war in Israel and Palestine, and it's very, very sad that people will use religion as a way of destroying life. I think that you know, God is He is the creator and the destroyer, and for humans to try, you know, when you kill someone else, what you're also doing, that's another form of um, idolatry, in that you are taking and assuming the power of God, and God is the one who gives life and takes life. And so these people that, you know, do violence in the name of Islam or do violence in the name of religion don't represent the best and the truest of our faith traditions. And so I think it's always important for us to be able to contextualize it and to understand that there is depth and beauty in all religious traditions, and that a couple of extremists don't speak for the whole tradition.
Thank you. That's really, I mean, collectively really inspiring, and I really appreciate you each kind of uplifting in your own way. Just the tremendous depth of your distinct faiths and how and what that means to you personally, and just hearing about whether it's a wrestling or struggling with God, whether it's a submission to God, whether it's using faith as a means of coping. These are all, you know, this is all faith is showing up for us in different ways and in deeply meaningful ways, and affirming ways as well. Okay, just to shake it up a little bit, Darnisha, I'm gonna pose the next question to you. Could you please share a situation in your life when someone treated you differently in a work setting due to your faith identity and or another identity you hold, and how did you respond in that particular situation? And before you go, I just want to encourage Tracy and Iqbal and Darnisha, please feel free to jump in and respond to your fellow panelists if something prompts you, or if you also have a inquiry about it.
Thank you, Carolyn. Okay, so for me, a situation that I experienced was actually in my workplace. My boss had to leave early for the day, and there was some equipment being delivered by a vendor. She just told me all I had to do was sign off for it. I said, okay, you got it, boss, whatever you need. You know, at the time I was an administrative assistant. So when the delivery arrives, the gentleman comes in and he said he had a package for my boss. I did let him know that she was not present, and that he could leave the items with me and I'll sign for it. He proceeded to tell me that it was some very expensive equipment. And he had specific instructions that he had to bring it up to our office. And at this point, I'm like questioning, like, what's going on here? It's like, okay, I have on a badge showing that I do work here. And that day I also had on a shirt that had the company logo on it as well. And I'm sitting at the front desk when you walk in. So clearly I'm like the director of first impressions here. He proceeded to tell me that it was like, tried to give me an estimated dollar amount of the equipment. And this is a delivery person. He's delivering the equipment from our corporate office. And I just proceeded to tell him, yes, my boss is not here. You're more than welcome to leave the equipment here. In these moments, you tend to question your reality. You're questioning what's happening. You try to give benefit of the doubt. And then there's also the not wanting to be perceived as the angry Black woman. So you try to downplay, you over smile, you know, you try to make sure your tone is not, you don't raise your voice, your tone doesn't change. It's like politely, and I smile all the time anyway. But in this moment, as I'm questioning, I'm like, God, what is happening right now? Why is he refusing to leave these items with me? I work here. He clearly sees that I work here. But I got confirmation when he proceeded to point. I had two other coworkers who were there. He proceeded to point past me and asked if he could leave the items with one of the other ladies that were sitting there who was not African American. And so when he did that immediately, I had to accept it for what it was. He did not feel comfortable leaving those iPads. It was iPads. So it was like 80 iPads with me for a meeting that we had the following day. He did not feel comfortable leaving the iPads with me and would prefer to leave them with the other ladies who were not African American. Mm-hmm. And in that moment, I knew that if I allowed him to overlook me, if I allowed him to walk past me and leave them with someone else, I'm validating whatever thought that he is thinking. So in that particular moment, I proceeded to tell him, like, listen, my boss is not here for the day. You are delivering it to the correct department. You see my badge. You see I have on the logo shirt. I do work here. At this point, you're preventing me from being able to do my job, a task that my boss assigned to me. I proceeded to tell him, I was like, if you don't feel comfortable leaving the items here, you're more than welcome. You can take them back to corporate and maybe we can facilitate delivery at another time. And that's pretty much how I handled that particular situation. And again, I wrestled back and forth with it. I'm like, what is going on here? The next day, I even debated about telling my boss about it, just so that she's aware that we have this vendor who behaved this way. And again, I always try to give benefit of the doubt. So even in explaining it to my boss, I left out any of my beliefs of what I felt happened. My boss, who is not African American, who I adore at the time, I explained to her, I was like, hey, I know you gave me this task. I just wanted to let you know what happened. And I just explained it to her. I was like, he just was refusing. He proceeded to tell me how much they were worth. He even asked if he could leave it with the other ladies. And also before he left, he took a picture of where he left the item as well. This was not my first time receiving this equipment at all. We've had other delivery people provide the same items to us because this meeting happened every month. And those iPads had to be programmed to show data for our meetings. So this was my first time experiencing someone refusing to leave something. As I explained it to her, before I could even finish, she got upset. I didn't say anything about how I felt or what the reasoning was. She immediately got what it was immediately. She sent a long email to the company and everything, explaining what happened and indicating that she no longer wanted that delivery person to be delivering products to our facility. I didn't know how much I needed that support from my leader in that moment. I was just telling her, thinking, I just want to let somebody know what happened. But the fact that she immediately saw through the situation and understood, and she felt offended by it as well. And she sent that email, that meant the world to me. She's no longer my boss, but she's like my best friend. So I just wanted to share that particular situation that I experienced.
Thank you for sharing that. And I appreciate you also sharing how you process this experience and then how you chose to kind of advocate for yourself in the aftermath and the power of your boss or supervisor showing up for you in a way that I'm assuming felt authentic for you and was probably really critical to your sense of well-being in that workplace.
Absolutely.
Thanks for sharing that, Darnisha. Iqbal, I would love to turn to you, and I can just repeat the question. So the request is to share a situation in your life when someone treated you differently in a work setting due to your faith identity and or another identity, and then how did you respond?
Well, thank you, Danisha. That was a very that was a very honest memory, and I appreciate you sharing that with us. I have had so many experiences in my life, and I think just to think of it kind of overall, I think one of the challenges to have my mother's family is from Tanzania, my father's family is from Pakistan. I grew up in Louisiana, rural Louisiana. And so I've had many experiences, and September 11th, when I was in university, was one of the biggest ones. And it was very challenging to have your entire country and your entire society turn on you in terms of it's, you being seen as an enemy, even though you're an American. And so, and my mother was a headscarf. And she's had challenges as well. So I think one of the things that I am very proud to be living in the United States and happy is that It's a place where people like you all gather and attest and affirm diversity and the beauty of a multicultural society, which isn't the case in many parts of the world. And so, you know, one of the things that I think that I've learned through the challenges of being Muslim in America, and then just, you know, living in Africa and Asia, and having sort of my work and my research is really the message of resilience. I think that it's something that, you know, you are going to be challenged, and it's not even just I have a very, very dear Japanese friend, and she didn't feel at home in Japan. She was Japanese, so it's not just another. It can be people from your own community as well. They're always, so I think that being able to see people who are kind and helpful, and they're people that create impediments in your life, and you as an individual are a remarkable soul. That, you know, the Buddhists have a saying that they believe in the idea of reincarnation. So when you're to be reincarnated as a human is like a very rare thing, because you're able to create karma and destroy karma, and so it's a really, really powerful thing to be born as a human being. They say that it's so rare, it's as if a turtle has bobbed its head up in the water and is in a hole of a wooden plank. So it's such a rare thing to be able to be here in this world and to move through it. So I think that just kind of, again, that idea of humility and compassion towards other people, even as we feel that they are, you know, treating us badly, and they shouldn't be doing what they're doing. The other thing I wanted to leave you with is that I had a very dear friend. So I worked in the Air Force after university, and I was teaching people about Islam with it, and also worked as a chaplain. And there's a Orthodox chaplain, a very dear friend of mine, Christian Orthodox, Greek Orthodox. And he used to say every time he would enter a room, he would pray for everyone in that room, that whatever struggles they're having, that God ease their prayer, their suffering. So I think that's something also to understand, is that it's not just to let things go, but to also understand that we're all suffering in some sort of way. And when people do things that are mean or bad or evil, it's not necessarily about us. It's also about them and their suffering and their challenges. So walking through the world with humility and compassion, I think, are the two really important aspects of my faith tradition. And I hope it's sort of the source of my resilience as well. Thanks.
That's incredibly powerful. And I'm just repeating that last, or summarizing that last comment that you made about walking through the world with humility and compassion is a huge anchor of your faith, I think you said, and also a source of your own resilience. Saying that aloud as I process it myself, and kind of the power of those words and they digest. So thank you for offering that. Tracy, I would love to hear your thoughts as well, please.
Absolutely. I wanted to comment on what each of my co-panelists have just said. And Darnisha, thank you so much for your vulnerability and your honesty in sharing that story. And somebody that I know says often that we can't fight homophobia, like we can't leave homophobia to be a problem of LGBTQ people, and we can't leave racism to be a problem of Black people, or Islamophobia. You know, we all need to be in this fight together. And the fact that you had an ally at work who lended their voice to support you is such a beautiful thing. And I think that what Iqbal was just saying also exemplifies that of needing each other. And I think, like, moments, at least I'm experiencing the current moment with the war in Israel and Palestine, to be a moment where there's so many emotions, that oftentimes in moments of high emotion, each of us withdraws into a corner that feels safer and points our fingers at the other, or tends to generalize about the other, whoever that other might be. And these moments are actually when we need to lean in and support each other in the way that my co-panelists just talked about. Because that support and that love and that humility and that willingness to see the divine in each other is really what will get us through these moments. And so I'm just really grateful for what each of you shared. I have been an anti-bias educator for a long time. And a number of years ago, I was in an anti-bias, I was doing professional development. I was in a course that I was taking, it was a virtual course on how to have really difficult conversations. And I don't know why, but I really enjoy having difficult conversations and like leaning into that discomfort, which is different than being unsafe, right? And I think that that's an important distinction. But in this course, the instructor, somebody, a participant in the course put something in the chat that was anti-Israel. And it was during a different time of strife in the Middle East. It was that comment that was put in the chat was not really related to what was happening in the class, but somebody felt strongly about something and commented in the chat something that was anti-Israel. And the professor of the course lifted up what this person said in the chat and agreed with it. It was a moment, sort of like Darnisha said, where you are questioned, did that happen? Is that really? And so I decided, in the moment, sometimes you're not always ready to respond. So I waited, and after class, I sent an email to the instructor and I said, we're in a course teaching us how to have difficult conversations. And it is really true that, there are many things that Israel has done as a nation that are not okay, as is true of all other nations. And in a course about difficult conversations, it was such a teachable moment for us to talk about what that felt like and how are constructive ways for us to process this. And I received back a very long email just doubling down on the anti-Israel sentiment that actually kind of it segued a little bit into anti-Semitic, and it was just a moment. I'm an individual. I live in the United States. I'm not responsible for the actions of my own government necessarily sometimes, or other governments, as much as I may or may not love, my people, my faith, Israel. And so it was that losing the distinction, blurring the lines between the individual and the institution, and losing sight of that person in a moment that was really designed to teach us how to navigate around or through those things. And that's a story that I wanted to share.
And I want to recognize the tremendous courage that you demonstrated, and not just something didn't sit well with you in this particular context, and it doesn't sound like space was created or to talk through it. And so I would imagine that took a tremendous amount of bravery and you leaning into discomfort to have that follow-up message. Unfortunately, that follow-up communication, unfortunately, it didn't result in a more nuanced exploration of the topic, which feels like a missed opportunity in that particular case. But I commend you for that. And,
Yes.
kind of similar to the ways that, I see that as a form of bravery that, that our other panelists have shared in their own circumstances. And, it doesn't always create an output that is the desirable one, but nonetheless is critical to the fight. So I'd love to pose one more question to each of you and then open it up to our audience to ask questions. So that's my nudge to the audience members to start getting their brains thinking about something that they might want to pose. So Iqbal, I'm going to start with you. How might you want someone to approach you if they had a question about your faith identity or other identity as it relates to something that you're wearing, an object that you're perhaps displaying on your desk at work, or a day that you're observing for your faith?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I'm always open. Like my office door is always open. I think that that's always one way. Another way that I think we do it, and I'm glad we're going to be able to do it on Friday, is to share a meal together. And that's something that I always do with my students. So whenever we have like a mosque visit or something like that, I always make sure that there's food available, and we break bread together. And I think that's really, it's one of the most amazing experiences, right? Like that you're able to break bread together, you talk. It's one of the deepest common human experiences that we can sort of share. Aside from maybe parenthood, I think parenthood is also like quite remarkable in itself. Yeah, so I think just like creating those spaces. So basically what you have is you kind of have barriers. And the question is like, how do you break those barriers? And I think whatever is common among us, and sharing food and music is another one. There's some very beautiful like Sufi Ottoman music that we've done projects on. And music is another thing that like is able to connect us, and opens up people to ideas and stuff like that. Send me an email and I'm happy to like respond as well. So I think just sort of being public, being open, and having events where people are able to experience something from your culture that's not about just that. So I think that's the thing. I think that from a traditional Christian Protestant perspective, the idea of religion, the sacred and the secular are very separate things. But in reality, religion, if you're a religious person, it suffuses your entire life. Religion is bound up with culture, it's bound up with language, it's bound up with so many different things. So even when students learn Arabic, for instance, they're also learning about the Quran, which is the highest form of the tradition. They're learning about cultures, Arabic-speaking cultures, and the ways that people think and act. So I think that just having open lines of communication and creating those spaces where we can just share something as humans, I think is the best way.
Yeah, thank you for naming that. And I love those three kind of core experiences that you named. I mean, I can say for myself that completely resonates in terms of breaking bread, the experience of parenting and music being common connectors that can kind of lay the foundation for that deeper inquiry. Darnisha, how about you?
So for me, I'm pretty open myself. I always have an open door policy, and just wanted to build upon what Iqbal said, because my grandmother always told me, where there's food, there's love. And I think that that's something that transcends across all religion, races. Everybody comes together over a meal. We discuss things at that time, and it's hard to kind of argue when you're eating a meal that was made with love. So for me, I'm open for communication. And I think the issue with that communication is a lot of times people don't want to offend the person that when they have a question regarding whether it's their faith or their identity. And when we have that fear, fear is crippling. When we're afraid of doing something, we do nothing. And and that kind of stops the conversation. The fight to us just kind of having an understanding of one another is because we're afraid to do so. So we have to kind of have those difficult conversations, as Tracy has alluded to. We have to have those difficult conversations, because that's the only way that we're going to get a better understanding of each other as human beings.
Would it be fair, Darnisha, to say that for yourself, you would encourage people to lean less into the fear of not worrying as much about phrasing something perfectly, or whether it's coming off as offensive, and lean into more of that the message will land as long as your intent is genuine, and that that you're approaching with genuity? Is that capture kind of?
Yes, so
How you would approach that?
Absolutely, that captures it 1,000%. Case in point, I had an experience with the prior leader. It was a holiday event, and he wanted to make sure that what he was wearing was not offensive to anybody. Before even parading around in this outfit, he pulled me to the side and he immediately said, he's like, Darnisha, I'm coming to you to ask because I don't want to offend anybody and I trust your judgment. Is what I'm wearing offensive? I mean, it was an ugly sweater. It was the black llama on there. He wanted to make sure that the black llama didn't offend anyone that was black. And I appreciated that because he took the time before he went parading around the hospital in this outfit to verify that it was not going to be offensive to other people. And I appreciated that conversation because he could have just walked around the hospital and it may have offended somebody, but he was not afraid. He did not shy away from asking that particular question. It was very appreciated by me, at least.
Thank you. Thank you for offering that. Tracy, I'll turn to you.
Sorry, again, I'm struggling with that mute button. Yes, I think that when, right, I've already alluded to it, some of us have, that conversation and communication is so important. And so I think if you want to learn more and you lead with curiosity, which was one of the ground rules that you started us off with, Caroline, right, that desire to know is a beautiful thing. And I think if you ask, noting your tone, noting how you are coming across with your curiosity, but if it's genuine desire to learn and to grow and to affirm somebody, better, that asking is fine. I also, though, would suggest that you think about where the curiosity is coming from and whether or not the information that you're looking for is your business or not. If it is something that's deeply private or personal that maybe you wouldn't want somebody asking a similar type of question about you, maybe check some of that curiosity. We all carry around these magical rectangles that can find out lots and lots of information. So I also highly recommend that while being in conversation and getting to know your coworkers or your neighbors or your community better is important. If there's information that you might be able to teach yourself first, or in addition to doing some of that research on your own, and not turning to somebody who holds a marginalized identity to be your teacher or your educator, but doing some of that work yourself is also really important.
Tracy, I agree with that 1,000%. We do have to seek education ourselves. I mean, everything's on TikTok now. I'm sure everybody's familiar with TikTok. You do the TikTok dances and all of that. But there's even, educational parts of TikTok where you can learn about different cultures, different religions and all of that. So there are, as you stated, the magical rectangle that we can use to educate ourselves as well.
And furthering in agreement with you, and also just making sure that you check your sources, because we want to make sure we're getting our information from trustworthy places, which can be very hard to discern these days.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah, I was going to add that layer too, that I think sometimes actually, and feel free to push back on this, any of you, but if you're looking for a source to learn more and don't know where to start, you might be able to ask an individual, is there something that you would recommend, an organization whose values align with yours, or a recent article or something that, kind of share your genuine curiosity and desire for self-growth and learning yourself. And they may be able to point you in the direction as well. I would love to open it up for anyone who's participating today, particularly from the city of Miami. If you have a question, you would just go into the Q&A tab, which is on the top of your screen. It's in the center of mine. And you would click the section that says ask a question and then press submit. And that will, or you would press ask, I believe, and that would come through. I have one initial question that has been asked, and then I will look back for others. I'm wondering, kind of just to follow, just follow up on this, to follow up kind of on the thread that Darnisha actually just mentioned of someone did approach you and it was actually a positive experience for you. Like it was, they were asking you about this holiday party and what you felt they valued your perspective on what was appropriate and not. And it sounds like that was an affirming experience for you. curious to know if either Tracy, Iqbal, or Darnisha, if you have another one, if you can think of a time when you did have an experience when someone approached you and it was an interaction that felt good and affirming. I think we often talk about these topics in a negative light and about when things went wrong, but there are so many times when things go right and are the foundations and building blocks for then deeper, more nuanced relationship building. So I throw that out to either of you if anyone has something to offer in response.
I mean, I think for me, I take my students out on visits to a mosque, usually every semester. Well, before COVID, I mean, I think we're getting back into it now, but that is like an eye-opening experience for a lot of students. They've never, they have a lot of negative stereotypes about Muslims, about what a mosque is, and then they go and they see a call to prayer, they witness sort of the Friday sermon, and then we all eat together. And it's quite a remarkable sort of experience for many of the students who have, said, my mom said, okay, well, why are you going to a mosque? Why are you dealing with those Muslims? And then they come out of the experience and they're like, this is such an amazing experience. These are really good people. They really advocate, to their own family members who maybe have very narrow understandings of other people. And that's really heartening just to see sort of that transformation, these kids' faces and how they interact with their families. So I think it's just a very powerful experience. So I think that's very life affirming. That's what it means to be a teacher. And even, as you teach your children as well, so to expose them to something that you enjoy, that's amazing, and see it in their face, that's amazing too. So yeah.
You sharing that just now, Iqbal, just makes me think about how valuable that experience would be. At least I can speak for myself. I can imagine in folks in all different types of workplace settings, not only academic and not only within your particular topical expertise, and even I would imagine for school-age children as well. And kind of just learning and having exposure from an early age, and that normalization of different practices and cultures and belief systems. So you might be invited. You might be invited to take people to take others around.
No, I think it would be wonderful. I think it would be also just wonderful to have, because it's really wonderful to see Temple of Bethlehem kind of at the forefront of this, because I think it's such an important institution in the history of Miami, and the work that you guys are doing is absolutely incredible. So you guys taking the lead on it in a very, very difficult time, I think speaks to the dedication that you guys have to this mission. And, if there's things that we can do and looking forward to kind of continuing these efforts, but it's really appreciated. The way that you guys put yourself out there and you invest the time and the energy into making sure that the next generation, has a better world, in one in which, faith is both recognized and it's appreciated and it's shared, and that gives us a deeper and more meaningful experience. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Iqbal, for uplifting the work of the Unbiased Initiative of Temple Beth-Am. We really appreciate it. I do have one last question from an audience member that I would love to ask. I don't want to, Darnisha, if you had something to share, I'll turn to you in a moment, but I'm just going to pose this so that the three of you can think of it. Do you think the workplace is an appropriate place to discuss coworker religion and sexual identity, or do you think it's best not discussed while at work? This comes from one of our City of Miami employees. I'm going to repeat it once more, and then please, if either of you have something to share. Do you think the workplace is an appropriate place to discuss coworker religion and sexual identity, or do you think it's best not discussed while at work?
Can I answer this one? I have a lot of strong opinions about this. I think that oftentimes when we say we don't want to discuss religion or sexual orientation, we are talking about those that are the non-dominant religions or sexual orientations, and that we often don't notice when we're talking about the more dominant religions or, or heterosexuality. And so in that limiting, we keep our coworkers from talking about what makes them who they are and the parts of their lives that bring them a lot of joy. And so if I'm restricted to talk about my faith or my wife, that's hard for me to tell stories about my life outside of work if I can't talk about my spouse. And so just making sure that we don't limit some people while not limiting others.
You see, I agree with that 1,000%. I mean, most of us are at work 8 hours, some 12-hour shifts. Some people even work 16 hours. So sometimes work is like your home away from home. And I just kind of want to quote, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. One of those is belonging. And you want to feel like you belong at work. That's kind of one of the things that make you want to come to work. I mean, if you're there for that long period of time, sharing things about yourself helps build and strengthen those relationships between, coworkers. It can reduce anxiety within the work environment. And it just kind of fosters an environment for inclusion and understanding of the differences amongst each other, knowing that that all contributes to the work that we do here for the organization. So I mean, to me, you don't want to limit what somebody's able to share, I mean, regarding themselves within the workplace, because you want them to feel included in that space.
Thank you, Darnisha. I just want to be mindful of time. Iqbal, if you have the last word, I will hand anything last to share. No pressure at all. I'll hand it to you. Otherwise, we will close our program out.
No, just this was really wonderful. Blessings to everyone that is here, and I pray that we are able to grow in faith, and that whatever challenges and sufferings that we have are eased, and we also acknowledge our ancestors and the people that came before us and that laid the groundwork for the amazing work that we're able to do, and for the beings in progress that we are. So thank you again for doing this, and really appreciate it. Oh, okay.
Thank you. That's a beautiful, I think, kind of final message. And so I really thank you for that offering. And I thank all three of you for for truly demonstrating what it means to bring your full selves to this space. And so we are tremendously grateful to you. I'm going to turn it back over briefly to my co-chair, Lisa Gitlin, just to wrap us up. And then I believe that the City of Miami organizers have some prizes to distribute. But let me pass it over to Lisa Gitlin.
Thank you, Caroline, for today. Thank you for joining us today. Today's program is an example of how Temple Beth Am's unbiased initiative and Break the Bias are using dialogue to connect across various identities and expand our understanding and appreciation of one another. We invite you to learn more about Break the Bias and the overall Unbiased Initiative. Please visit our website at www.tbam.org/unbiased or email us at unbiased@tbam.org. You can see the slide on the screen, and the information will also be in the Q&A. If you're interested in connecting with any of our panelists, their contact information has also been pasted into the Q&A. Thank you again to the City of Miami for inviting us to be a part of this year's Diversity Day. We're grateful that it is offering spaces for dialogue that explores and celebrates the distinct identities of its workforce and the broader city. Thank you. And now back to, I guess, Aseline.